Welcome, Travis.
Nice to be here.
We're all learning how to exchange and communicate in new ways here these days. And so appreciate you coming and playing around with us at one time here. We've been having sessions all around the technology, and this morning has all been around licensing. We've had folks from SoCan and Resound explaining that the world of licensing is not just dealing with one society in the US, but there are multiple societies to deal with around the globe. And David Oxenford, we just had here, who's been involved in a lot of licensing issues for terrestrial and webcasting, gave us a good background onto the difference between musical rights for sound recordings and for composition. And so we've got a little bit of background on the different types of rights. And probably the most important right for webcasters and the simplest right to secure is with SoundExchange. And so we've invited Travis here to, who's helped Live 365 for a number of years, and our webcasters and our other competing services that also provide webcasting. He's been very helpful to make sure our webcasters are licensed. And I will point out that dealing with a lot of webcasters, it's not wanting to fly under the radar, it's just lack of experience, lack of knowledge about how to do this. And so the attempt today is to try to bring you up to speed in what these rights are and how to secure them, so both the artist gets supported and the webcaster. So I'll turn it over to you, Travis, to tell us a little bit about your world.
Well, I did catch a little bit of the end of David's time with you. He's a great guy. I've been on lots of panels with him over the years. He knows what he's talking about. So it was great that you were able to connect and have him as part of your day to day.
So yeah, it's, you know, this is especially from the small webcaster world. It's such a passionate world. It's such a family. People helping each other, from the legal to the technical people to the licensing people. And that's why, from my previous background in a public radio to this, it's a world where there's so much passion that it's fun to work in. So we thank you for being part of that family.
You know, I'm so glad that you invited me to this. It's just a nice example that even though service providers and webcasters and people who use music are sometimes on the other side of the aisle than the people who create music and are protecting the interests of the musicians and the record labels and the rights owners themselves. Sometimes they're going to be on opposite ends of an argument. Sometimes we're in the middle right now of a rape proceeding, which I'm sure David maybe talked about a little bit. But it's nice that we can all acknowledge, okay, there are some things that we're going to be clearly having different perspectives on and needing to, you know, and eventually the truth somewhere in the middle will be found. But that there are so many things that are just the reality of the industry, and knowing that we can all help each other and we can all provide information, and we're all ultimately trying to have the strongest, all of us want the strongest music industry possible, because we all love the music. So it's nice that days like this and opportunities like this help to reinforce that thought, which is great.
Yay, and that's what there are real people behind each side, you know, that really want to make things happen, and it's not just an organization, you know, and that's part of why we just wanted to introduce webcasters to the people who they're dealing with. And so it's nice that you come on and explain a little bit of it all to us.
I have a short presentation, like 15-20 minutes, if you want me to share that. A little bit of it might have been covered by what David did, but I don't know who saw that and who's coming in fresh now, so it's worth. But most of this stuff is about SoundExchange, so, and about what webcasters need to know. Let me see if I'm able to share my screen.
You should be able to.
And let's see if I can do this here. Wow, check that out. Technology. That's amazing. Amazing.
All right, let me.
All right, do we see this? Do we see my presentation slide here?
Yeah, and I'm doing view options, fit to window. So I got the whole thing up there.
Excellent, excellent. That's me. I'm Travis Ploeger. That's my goal weight. I'm going to get back to there at some point. I've been with SoundExchange since 2006. And back in 2006, SoundExchange had barely 24 employees, if that. Since then, I've grown with the company. We have about 150 people now, full time. We were processing in the millions before, and now we're in the billions now. We just reached a $7 billion threshold of money out the door to artists and rights owners. I'm pretty proud of that work, and I've loved being with SoundExchange this entire time. So I've learned a lot about the industry and the company, yeah, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. This is the disclaimer that the lawyers always force me to put in, like David, in a presentation. And really all this is saying is that I'm not a lawyer myself. And so this is all an educational resource for folks who are streaming. If you've got specific questions about how anything we talk about here applies to your service specifically, it's always a good idea to just ask us directly with your specific situation, or to contact your own lawyer or information that you trust on your end with that kind of knowledge. Let's see here, and David Oxenford is a great person for that. This is what we're going to talk about today, a little bit about copyright law, specifically as it relates to SoundExchange, and then statutory licensing in general and our role within that. Webcaster rates and terms, just very brief stuff, and then there's some time for questions, hopefully, if people have an opportunity to chat in. This is a pretty basic slide. What is a copyright? There are two copyrights that exist in every recorded song. There is the underlying music, the notes and lyrics on the page, as well as the sound recording itself, that specific version of a song. Both of these rights give the owners of the work, which are usually the creators of the work, the right to control how their work is used. And that could be many different ways. It could be the way that a work is copied or a recording is copied and distributed, how it's publicly shown, any derivatives that come from that. So if someone's going to, make a new work of art based on the art that they have, the ability to control that is owned by the copyright owner of the original work. And specifically for what concerns webcasters would be the public performance of sound recordings. And that's what we're focusing a lot on today. Here's an example that I like to use. The Dolly Parton, she wrote the famous tune, "I Will Always Love You," and she even did a recording of it that was very successful, but it was nowhere near as successful as Whitney Houston's version of that from the Bodyguard soundtrack. There's a separate copyright just for the specific sound recording of Whitney Houston's version of that. And so those are distinct copyrights. Even though the same musical work copyright exists for both, there are distinct sound recording copyrights for each of the sound recordings, the one that Dolly Parton did and the one that Whitney Houston did. So the performance right, that's what we are really concerned about today. Both underlying musical works and the sound recording copyright, both of those different copyrights have a separate and unique performance right. The sound recording performance right is relatively new and narrow. It's only been around since close to the year 2000, 1998, when the Digital Millennium Copyright Act went into law. And there is no performance right for the sound recording, specifically for terrestrial radio, AM/FM. But for webcasters, because it's on the internet, this performance right kicks in for the sound recording. So there are two separate and distinct performance rights that webcasters have to worry about: the musical work performance right and the sound recording performance right. There are two common ways to get that sound recording performance right. One is via the statutory license that the government set up. We are the only company that is authorized by the government to provide that statutory license. And if services choose to use it, it means that copyright owners can't say no. It's sometimes called a compulsory license. They have to let a service use their sound recordings. The record labels can't say no to it. But the webcaster, they need to comply with the rules. There are actually two statutory licenses. We lazily will just call the license the statutory license, but there are actually two. It's section 112 and 114 of the Copyright Act. 112 is the permission to make a copy of the sound recording, a digital copy. Sometimes that copy is what you're storing on your server. Sometimes it's the copy that is existing only for like a nanosecond when it's being transmitted by whatever software you're using. But regardless, that copy, the ability to make a copy, like a couple slides ago we saw, is a different permission from the permission to perform a sound recording, to perform that copy. So section 114 is the license that lets you perform the copy that you just made with section 112. The way that payments are split between that is a 5%, 95% split. So 5% of the royalties that are paid go to that section 112 and 95% go to section 114. Luckily for services, they don't have to worry about that split at all. You're calculating royalty and paying it, and it's covering both of those licenses. And SoundExchange is dealing with the split and dealing with that. If a service doesn't want to use the statutory license, they may always choose to directly license, which means that a webcaster or other service, they would contact the record label, usually who owns that sound recording copyright is the record label. They would contact the record label directly and then negotiate whatever terms they want. Sometimes we help with that. Sometimes a record label come to SoundExchange and say, hey, SoundExchange, we just set up a direct license with this record, with record label Awesome. And record label Awesome, rather, they're contacting us saying, hey, SoundExchange, we just set up a direct license with webcasting service Amazing. And we would love it if you would distribute the royalties to all the artists on our record label that are played by this webcasting service. So sometimes we will help facilitate that stuff. So to sum up, if you're using the statutory license, everything's always going to come to us regarding the sound recording. But if you've got a direct license, sometimes you might still give it to us if the record label wanted to do that. Who else does all this licensing? Well, the public performance right for the musical work is handled by several different collectives. ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, GMR is the newest one. And these entities, they don't overlap each other. If I were a songwriter or a composer or a publisher, I would be choosing one of these entities to represent me and my work for public performances. So I would have to pick between ASCAP or BMI. And you as a webcaster, if you decide to stream music, you would have to decide, well, am I playing music that has their owners with the ASCAP organization, or am I playing music that has the BMI organization? Those are the two largest, and often webcasters will try and be safe and just pay both ASCAP and BMI and even CSAC and even GMR. But they're competing organizations and they cover different catalogs. The sound recording side, on the other hand, that's just us. So yeah, just us. So it makes it easy. As long as you're paying us, it covers anything and everything that has a copyright. So to sum up, we handle the performance right and the related ephemeral right, copyright, for digital audio transmissions of sound recordings made pursuant to the licenses of 112, 114, or under direct licenses if we're asked to do so. This statutory license that we've been speaking about, it's set, they're rates that are set by a group of judges called the Copyright Royalty Board. Those judges have selected SoundExchange to be the ones to administer the license, which means that we receive the royalties and the documentation from webcasters like yourselves, and then we distribute those royalties to artists and copyright owners, record labels. And the way that that split is, and it's in the law the way that split is, after we deal with the ephemeral percentage, that section 112 percentage, and the admin fees of what helps pay me and folks like us to do this service, that split, it's in the law, it's in the statute, and it goes 50% to the rights owner, 45% to the featured artist, and 5% to an intellectual property rights fund that's managed by two different unions, the American Federation of Musicians, AFM, and then SAG-AFTRA. And that small amount, that goes to backup musicians and studio musicians and non-featured artists, people that are often not in a royalty stream. They are able to receive royalties now. which is great. Here's an example of how that money gets split up. So using that sound recording of "I Will Always Love You" by Whitney Houston, let's pretend that we collected $100 worth of royalties from webcasters for the use of that particular recording. And $100 using 2019 rates, it's about 1,000 listeners each listening to it 55 times. Okay, that's roughly what that is. So 55 listeners each listening to 1,000 times, or 1,000 listeners each listening to it 55 times. You can slice and dice it anyway, but that's about what $100 is. That $100 going clockwise from the top with the orange. First, $6.50 would be the admin fee that would go to SoundExchange. That 6.5% is based on the 2019 admin fee. Working our way down, $4.68 is going to go to Arista Records. They're the rights owner. For the ephemeral royalty, that was the copy that was made, that was then streamed. That was the percentage of the 5% is for the copy. So that's $4.68. Working our way around, $44.41 is for the performance royalty that again goes to the record label. This is for the actual performance itself. Working our way around, $39.97 is going to go to Whitney Houston because that's the featured artist on that track. And Whitney Houston has given us a payment schedule so that some of that money is going to a drummer, a guitarist, or probably anyway. Each artist is going to give us a specific schedule. And then finally, the last $4.44 is going to go to the fund, so that all the studio musicians that maybe aren't listed on the track, or backup musicians, etc., that will be that's where they're going. That's how they're going to get their money. They're going to get that $4.44. Note that Dolly Parton is nowhere on this wheel because hopefully, whatever services contributed to this $100 that we got, hopefully they also paid BMI, because I think she's with BMI, and she would have that money would have gotten to her through that. So, what are these rules that the statutory license that are in play for the statutory license? This is just a quick sum of what they are. One of them is a service has to be non-interactive, which means it has to look and feel like a radio station. So it can't be a jukebox service. It can't be an on-demand service. If what your activity as a webcaster mimics a lot of AM/FM stations, chances are you're going to be a non-interactive service. The material you use has to be commercially released. So it needs to be stuff that is out there in the world because the applicable owners want it out there. It can't be a bootleg recording. You can't publish the album, artist, and song title. Oh, excuse me. You need to publish the album, artist, and song title simultaneous with transmission. So that's on the player. Usually is the way that works. Usually it'll be scrolling along the player. You'll have the listing of an album, album name or title name or artist name, or all three of them actually is what the law would require. You can't pre-publish the song title before the transmission is made. So this means that you can't have a list saying, here are our next 10 songs, and then list them. Or you don't want to be announcing ahead of time, all right, at 2 o'clock on the nose, we're going to play the brand new Taylor Swift song, blah, blah, blah. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to basically replace the experience of purchasing or on demand with the statutory license. It is a different situation. There are limits to the amount of sound recordings that you can play by the same artist or album in a given time period. This is called the sound recording performance complement. And it just means that you can't play, Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon front to back at once. You have to pepper your transmissions with different artists and different albums. Currently, the limit is, according to the statute anyway, you can't play more than 4 songs in a 3-hour time period by the same artist, and no more than 3 of them can be consecutive. You can't play more than 3 songs from the same album in a 3-hour time period, and no more than 2 consecutively. So you got to have a wide variety to stay within the rules. Again, and this is to make it so it's a different kind of service than an on-demand service or purchasing music. And there's other small criteria as well for archived and continuous programming. If you are looping music over and over again, or you had a morning show that you wanted to play, or a specific music show that you wanted to have archived so people could hear it again and again, there are ways to do that within the statutory license. And you can look those up on our website, or you can ask me specifically for it via email, and I can help you out. So to use this stuff, you got to file a notice of use with the Copyright Royalty Board. There's a $40 filing fee with that. And then you got to make regular submissions to us, which are payments, forms, and playlists with audience measurement. Those are reports of use. And all that stuff can be done online with Licensee Direct, our portal. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's see. Let's go to our next slide. So there are many different kinds of license types with the statutory license for services to use. We're going to focus on webcasting, and Section 37 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 380, is where the default webcasting rates are. And there are several that are in there. There's a section for non-commercial educational webcasters. So if you're a college or high school, there's a way for you to stream using the license. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting, for several different terms now, has set up a separate license for public radio stations. But we're going to focus on commercial and non-commercial webcasters. So commercial webcasters, these are going to be AM or FM stations that are simulcasting their AM FM signal over the internet, as well as internet-only webcasters. So if you don't have to have an AM FM station, as most of the Live 365 people don't, you can be on the internet only and be a commercial webcaster. And I'm seeing on my screen that there are questions coming in, and at the end of the presentation, I'll look through some of those questions. So keep those coming in, and I'll get to those because we'll have time. We don't have a lot of slides here. The minimum fee for the commercial webcaster is $500 per station or channel. And if you have more than 100 stations or an infinite amount of stations, depending on the kind of service you are, you pay $50,000 up front. It's an advance against the actual royalty. It's not in addition to the royalty. It's basically the upfront payment. And if you don't use it up during the year, then that's what you owe during the year, was the minimum fee. The monthly per performance rate for a non-subscription transmission. So this is an ad-supported service or something where essentially you're just not charging listeners specifically to listen to your stream. That rate is $0.0018 or 18 cents for a 18 cents for 100 performances. And a subscription transmission would be $0.0023 or 23 cents for 100 performances. And a performance is a specific listener per recording. So if a recording is being transmitted and there were 10 listeners listening, that would be 10 performances. Even though it's one transmission of recording, it's going to 10 different listeners. So 10 recordings to one listener is 10 performances. 1,000 listeners for one recording equals $1.80 under the 2020 rates. Most commercial webcasters are giving us reports of use each month. It's a file where you're telling us every recording that was used for the month and the identification information for each recording. You're giving us the name of the track, the artist, and then either the ISRC, that International Standard Recording Code, or the combination of the album and the label. In addition to that information, we need the audience measurement. That's that per performance count. Now, if you're a minimum fee webcaster, that's your webcaster who's not going to have listenership that goes over that $500 per station or channel, you can give us quarterly reports and you can give us a 2-week sample instead. So there are two flavors of this: quarterly reporting if you're a smaller service that isn't going to exceed your minimum fee, or monthly reports giving us everything. Non-commercial webcasters, it's similar in rates. To be a non-commercial webcaster, you have to be tax exempt with the IRS as a 501c, or you have to have filed your paperwork to do so and expect to get it back. Usually it takes quite a while for the government to give that paperwork back. or you're owned and operated by a government entity like the town of Fresno or an Army base or something. If you're one of those things, or a school or college, then you would be eligible to be a non-commercial webcaster. And the minimum fee is the same, $500 per station or channel. And there's a listenership cap, though, that's covered by the minimum fee. And it's 159,140 aggregate tuning hours, which sometimes is called total listening hours. So that roughly about 1,000 listeners, 40 hours a week. So if that's the threshold, then you're a 501c service or owned and operated by a government entity, you could qualify for this. And that means then that apart from the minimum fee, as long as you're within that threshold, that's all you're paying is the minimum fee. You're still giving us monthly reports. If you're internet only, you're giving us monthly reports. And if you go above that threshold, then the per performance rate kicks in of 0.0018, which is the same as the non-subscription rate for commercial radio. We just talked about this again, the report of use. It's the same exact report of use as the commercial webcaster. We need all of the identification information. We need ISRCs or album and label. Yeah, if you're a minimum fee, if you're an AM/FM station, you can give us the 2-week sample. Otherwise, you're giving us monthly census. Licensee Direct is our online portal. You can do all of this stuff that we've talked about online. So you can log in, you can calculate how much you owe, you can print out copies for accounting purposes or auditing purposes of what you're paying. You can upload your files, your reports of use. There's QA on both of those processes, whether or not you're calculating your royalties or whether or not you're sending us the reports of use to say what you played, so that common errors like, oh, I left out all the titles of my file, of my recordings, or I did the math wrong, or stuff like that, the system will catch it right there while you're still logged in, which will save a lot of time with us having to get back to you and saying, oh, you forgot all the titles on your report, or your math is wrong. Using the online portal is a big help for both you and us. I've mentioned this ISRC several times, the International Standard Recording Code. It's a social security number, essentially, for sound recordings. There are many ways for you to get them from us so that you can use them in your reports when you're giving them to us. Because when we get recordings and they don't have ISRCs in them, we have to use our own matching algorithm and manual matchers. That's people like myself at a computer looking to see what you gave us and trying to match it manually with our repertoire using text matching and automated matching algorithms. And there are errors in that process that we have to be constantly QAing for and watching out for. But if you have ISRCs on these recordings, if you're reporting the use of a recording and including that code, now we're just looking up the code, and now we've associated in our system, and now we can get the royalties directly to those people in a quick and efficient way. There are many ways you can get ISRCs from us. Well, our repertoire database, we have millions of them. And they're coming to us directly from the rights owners themselves. The record labels are giving us a feed of those ISRCs. So it's authoritative and it's trustworthy. One way to get them is RU augmentation, when you upload logs to Licensee Direct as a part of our payment, as a part of paying us and sending us logs each month. You can go back to Licensee Direct and download what you've already loaded and see what we were able to match. We have a repertoire matching service where you can give us catalog files, lists of sound recordings you plan to use before you use them, or what is in your current repertoire. Give it to us with this service, and then we'll give you ISRCs back when we can match them. We have a website called ISRC Search, isrc.soundexchange.com. It's free for everyone to use. You can manually just look up ISRCs for your recordings. You can download that information shopping cart style. We have an API that if you're tech-minded, or if you have technology people that are helping to develop stuff for your website, or you're into that yourself, we have access to an API that we can give you that will allow you to connect to this ISRC search behind the scenes, so that now you can, in real time in your own software, be looking up ISRCs. And all this stuff is free. I have to put an asterisk, because if you're a ginormous service and you're giving us files that are millions of lines big, then we sometimes have to negotiate a way to do that. But for almost all services, this is a completely free service. And we want you to use it because we want you to get the ISRCs, because we want you to be using those when you're paying us and sending us reports so that the money can flow quickly. There are many ways to connect with SoundExchange. We're all over the place. SoundExchange.com is the best way to do it. Licensee relations at SoundExchange.com is a way to email us directly. And you can call us as well, 559-0555 in the 202 area code. Yeah, and thank you very much. I'm gonna check out the Q&A here and look at some of these questions.
Well, good. While you're looking at the questions, I gotta say I'm quite surprised. I was disappointed we were going to miss seeing you at the NAB this year.
Oh,
we always have a little Vegas stop by. Travis is always manning the old SoundExchange booth, and we get to stop by and basically ask one or two questions. Never get an overview presentation like this. Never have time to see the full story. So this was super great, even for myself, to get refreshed on what all of those SoundExchange rules and regulations and rates are.
You know, as I'm going through this, I did see a question or a chat question on the presentation from David Oxenford earlier about is Live 365 with SoundExchange. I saw that as a question, and it's worth saying, right, that a lot of this information that I presented, a lot of it is aimed at the idea that you are by yourself doing webcasting by yourself and you need to get licensing. There are services out there that like Live 365 where they are an aggregator service and helping you, facilitating your stream as a station, and they are taking care of licensing for you. So when I make statements earlier on that we're the only entity that's authorized to do the statutory license, technically that's true. You know, the best kind of correct is technically correct. And technically that is true, but when an entity like Live 365 is paying on behalf of stations, technically Live 365 is the licensee. So people that are in the Live 365 mechanism to be streaming, I'm not familiar with all the ins and outs of the different ways that people can be with Live 365, but I know that for at least a huge chunk of them, when you're with and streaming through Live 365 and they're paying for your royalties, be rest assured that those payments are flowing through Live 365 to SoundExchange, because Live 365, they are operating under statutory licensing. They're one of the services that are regularly paying us and giving us submissions. So that's important to put out there.
Yeah, thank you for that, because that's part of the job of Live 365 is, as we've learned in this panels, that licensing and all the types of licensing and all the requirements are quite complicated, not only in the US, but around the world. And so, and none of the webcasters that I've worked with are trying to avoid licensing or trying to avoid supporting the artist, but it's just the level to understand how to do it all. And so aggregators like ourselves try to limit or try to relieve some of that burden on the individual webcaster. And so it's like Live 365, but David brought up, there are religious organizations that group a bunch of rights together and go to SoundExchange and to ASCAP and secure for all of their members as well. So I think these players are an important part of the overall space. And today's webcast is not just for Live 365. So we have a lot of those individual webcasters that are trying to learn about this. So your comments and information was very important all around the space here.
And some of the rules, even if they aren't specifically about the rates, they're still going to be important for, that information is important for Live 365 members too, like the sound recording performance complement and the limits of what you can be putting in a 3-hour time period. It could be tricky for Live 365 to keep track of all of those thousands of stations doing that. So it's good for the individual webcaster to know those rules.
Exactly.
I'm going to go through some of these questions here that I see. Here's the first one. An anonymous attendee one of the biggest challenges we see as broadcasters is the very large number of pirate internet stations that operate without paying any licensing fees of any kind or offer downloadable music podcasts without the proper licensing in place. This is where the audience in the background will go, ooh. What are the plans for bringing the internet radio community into better compliance in regards to licensing? That's an excellent question. We do have an enforcement group in our legal department. We're the administrators of the statutory license. We're not the internet police. We don't have unlimited resources for that, but we do our best to be monitoring as best we can what the universe is like out there, especially when it comes to what's happening in our country. But if you as a radio station believe that, hey, you know of an entity that a scofflaw that is not really doing what they're supposed to be doing, you can tell SoundExchange. You can tell us anonymously if you want to. You can email us. You can that would be probably the best way to go about it, is say, hey, is such and such licensed? We have on our website a list of services every year that have submitted their notice of use for that year, or submitted a minimum fee to SoundExchange, which means that they're in the system. So if that's one way to check, hey, is this webcaster, is this service on this list? Because if they're not on that list, unless they're directly licensing everything, they might not be doing the right thing. So I would ask us, give us that information. The next question here from Scott Seltzer. How does copywriting work for small webcasters broadcasting recorded motivational speakers, internet influencers, or interviews from the web? So part of this I can help answer anyway. The statutory license is for the use of copyrighted sound recordings. So if it's a copyrighted sound recording that's commercially out there for use in the world, it doesn't have to be music per se. SoundExchange, we pay comedians, we pay book authors, we pay people that have copyrighted sound recordings that are being streamed under statutory licensing. There are a lot of comedy albums and stand-up comics that get paid by SoundExchange for their work. So if there's a motivational speaker, or if there's an interviewer, if there's something out there that's an actual copyrighted sound recording, in theory, that's something that those entities, the artists and the rights owners related to that specific recording, they could be getting paid by SoundExchange. So the services could be reporting to us that stuff. It's always a good idea. Something else to keep in mind too with this is that we're talking about the use of recordings. We're not talking about live things. So if I have a motivational speaker in my studio and we're doing an interview of some sort, because it's happening live, it's not going to be covered by statutory licensing that we're offering anyway, because it's not a recording. So now if you've got a recording of that instance and you're retransmitting that recording, or you're reusing it, now this licensing could come into play. It really is, it depends on the issue, it depends on the case. It could be that you're using an interview or a recording that does have a copyright, that does need a license. Maybe it doesn't. It would be a case-by-case basis. And your first stop should probably be to be finding out the source of what you're getting that stuff from, and asking them directly. Let's see here. The next question I have is from Gene Johnson. Oftentimes, most streaming feeds only provide or show that the title and artist information is displayed. How important is the album information being streamed? It's a good, excellent question. Lots of times, there is no album, right? If it's single, or if it's just not associated with an album. The whole concept of an album is not as common today as it was back when these laws were written, frankly. And so the intent of that is literally what it is. In fact, there's a parenthetical that says "if available" when they're talking about the album. They're saying "if available." So if there is an album that's available to that recording, then you're supposed to be including it. But if there isn't one, then you don't have to, because it doesn't exist. A lot of this also is about intent, right? Let's say you are you're streaming 100 songs, and 5 or 6 of them out of that 100, for some reason, you don't have the metadata for that album in there. Are you transgressing the law in a literal, technical way? Yes, you are, if there is an album there. But what is the overall intent of what you're doing? Are you purposely trying to neglect that information and prevent people from knowing how to purchase this sound recording or where to locate it out in the universe. No, it's just happening. It's a part of life. It would be a signal for you to double your efforts to make sure that, okay, do I have the right metadata? Do I have the right ISRC metadata from SoundExchange, which will pull this other metadata as well? We're much more concerned about prospective compliance and prospective behavior of services to try and do the best that they can do, rather than trying to play gotcha about stuff in the past. Especially when we're talking about the demographic of what this audience is. Let's see, this question, does Live 365 handle ISRC for its customers? I don't know the answer to that one, actually. I don't know if Live 365 is using the API or not that we have. But I do know that you are able to get that stuff directly with SoundExchange. That's worth asking ask your contact with Live 365, ask them if Live 365 can submit things on your behalf directly to SoundExchange. That is something that maybe could be happening to get ISRCs back easily. I'm looking at the time and I want to make sure I get through these. Here's one. Why is AM/FM terrestrial radio broadcast not held to the same copyright standards as a small webcaster? You know, I would need more specifics about that question, but from what it appears, I think it's a false premise, because for the most, terrestrial radio broadcast, I understand, okay. The law is simply different. There isn't a sound recording performance right for terrestrial radio. Part of that has to do with just history, just the fact that at the time where the internet came into play, and streaming came into play, there were revisiting of copyright law in general, and so there was an opportunity to really pursue and support sound recording copyright in a grand way. But terrestrial radio broadcasts have been around for decades and decades, and webcasters have not. Webcasters have only been around since the internet with streaming. So the law has changed and moved since that time. I will say that the U.S. is one of the only countries that doesn't have that performance right. I'm not going to get all political about that topic, but we are one of the few countries that does not have that, and most of the countries do. So that is, we would want all the standards to be the same, but that's a different conversation. Let's see. If a station broadcasts a podcast, say from Apple Podcasts or what have you, and it's just talk, no music, in particular, say a sermon, how would a station rebroadcast that? That's the question. It's an awkward to answer the way that's phrased. I'm not quite sure what the question is, although I can talk a little bit about this topic. We get this a lot from talk stations and sports stations and news stations that ask if they have to use statutory licensing. The answer is, well, are you playing music or copyrighted sound recordings as ins and outs in between your talk shows, or as background music, or as bumper music? Because if the answer is yes, then you still need permission to use that music, even if it is just a little clip, even if it's just 10, 15 seconds before your talk show starts. The good news is that while you still have to pay a minimum fee, which would be $500 a year from most stations, you're paying that minimum fee for the permission to use the music at all, the sound recordings at all. The ins and outs and the bumper music, that all is generally falling under the definition of something called an incidental performance, which means that you're not required to actually count the royalty. You're not calculating a royalty specifically for an incidental performance. We don't want you to give that to us in reports of use. We don't want you to be calculating that when you're uploading things to Licensee Direct and figuring out how much you owe. You're not including that stuff. And lots of talk and sports stations, 100% of the music that they're using are going to be incidental performances, in which case now they're not giving us reports. They're not calculating anything. They're just giving us a minimum fee. Once a month, they're logging in and saying, yep, I have zero liability this month. And they're not giving us any files. So hopefully that helps answer that question in part. Let's see. Someone says, wow, thank God for Live 365. And, it is good that there are services out there that aggregate and know what they're doing. You get what you pay for. So if you're in the market for someone to do this licensing for you, make sure that you're doing your research as a webcaster to make sure that you're confident, okay, this service I'm about to sign up with and handle my streaming for me, they're handling licensing correctly. And as far as the relationship with SoundExchange goes, I can say that Live 365, we're very happy to have them submitting to us and being in our umbrella. So yeah, there we go. Whew. I need a tiki drink is what I need. Man, oh man.
Travis has his favorite music selection always lined up. He's quite into the tiki bar scene, with not for the drinks but for the music,
the exotica,
and the, memorabilia.
I will say that today I am not normally, so it's Tiki Tuesdays for Travis every Tuesday, and so I've got my Aloha shirt on right now. I picked purple, and because even though normally I'd be listening to Les Baxter or Martin Denny or I don't know any number of exotica music recordings. Today, April 21st, I am listening to Prince all day today, because Prince was one of my favorite artists, maybe my favorite artist of all time. And he passed away in 2016 today, 4 years ago. So I've got my purple shirt, proud Minnesotan like Prince, and it's Prince all day nonstop today for me. So.
You know, one of the things I love working with the Live 365 webcasters is because and not only the webcasters, but our team here, from the technical to the accountants, they're all music fans. They're deeply passionate about it. I gotta imagine SoundExchange is filled with people who have knowledge and passion about music as well, like yourself, huh?
I have a music degree. I have a bachelor of music degree from a conservatory, Hart School of Music. Go Hawks! Back when I started at SoundExchange, out of the 24 folks that were there, a huge chunk of them were musicians and in bands and just in the industry, performance themselves or dealing on the business side of music. And as we've grown in size and become much more into the data of SoundExchange and a data company, just sheer mathematics would say that you're not going to have as much people who are directly musicians themselves or also moonlighting in the music industry. But a good chunk of us are, and we're not for profit, right? I mean, like we're not. There's no shareholder earning bonuses on principles of stock exchanges with SoundExchange. We're a not for profit. And all of the money that gets paid as royalties, we take as small an admin fee as possible, probably one of the smallest in the business, and we push it all out the door to artists and rights owners. And choosing to work at a not-for-profit, it means that you're not working at a for-profit. And you could read between the lines as to what that means for your salary for working at a not-for-profit rather than a for-profit, right? But you believe in the mission, and we're all passionate about music, and when you think about those recording artists in the 1980s and 70s that had their one hit, maybe their big hit, and that big hit is still being played. Well, now these same artists, they're advanced in age, and they're probably not selling records anymore. They're probably not touring anymore, and sometimes the only income that is dependable for this demographic of folks, these musicians, are the royalties that SoundExchange is able to deliver to them based on that one hit that they had. And it's vital. We get letters and we hear from these artists, and they're paying the rent, they're paying medical bills. And especially like right now in this time, we had all of our folks at SoundExchange right now with the coronavirus crisis. All of our employees now are working from home remotely, as I am. And we still were able to get our distributions out timely. And we paid millions last month, and we're going to pay millions this month. And these are people that right now, especially, they can't tour, they can't perform. There's no gigs that they can do, but that royalty check is still coming to them. So it's good. It's good work. And like I said, I'm very happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, I think it's, and part of why we wanted to bring the people behind the industries, behind the licensing, behind the technology is we're all trying to accomplish the same thing here. It isn't a battle between the societies, whatever. We're all trying to make musicians paid, webcasters paid, and like getting to know the people behind the scenes makes it a much more human business we're playing.
I see a question that came in here. Does SoundExchange make sure that royalties are payable to other collective rights management societies, other CMOs around the world? Boy, you know, as much as our government would love to be the world police, we don't have the ability to control what happens in other countries. We also we don't have the ability to make sure that, hey, you're supposed to be paying the PPL in Europe, or the Spanish collective, or the Brazilian collective. We don't have the authority or ability to make sure that you as a webcaster are doing those sorts of things. I can tell you though that we do have agreements with collectives in other countries, dozens of them, that allow artists and rights owners to be able to kind of one-stop shop. So if you're being paid by SoundExchange, you have the ability, if you're a member of SoundExchange, to be able to also have your money from other countries' collectives come through SoundExchange and come to you. But that's as a payee of SoundExchange. That means you're getting money from the other countries' collectives. As someone who pays SoundExchange, we can't assist with the other countries. We can't set their copyright laws and copyright, the value of the copyright and what's being charged for this stuff and how much you would need to compensate artists and rights owners for it. It's different from country to country. And so those countries are gonna set their own laws based on that, and they're gonna have their own collectives. And all we can do is do our best to make sure that we're talking to the other collectives and exchanging data where we need to, and being as public as possible as to what is covered by US use. So hopefully that helps to ask that. That's an excellent question to talk to a lawyer about, like David Oxenford, and it would be about specifically your use. So are you a radio station that is playing lots of things to another country, right? It's about the way SoundExchange treats this stuff is where the listener is. So if you're a radio station that's in Kansas and you have a Japanese listener, technically speaking, you're going to want to be making sure that you're dealing with the Japanese collective to pay for that Japanese listener's use and figuring out a way to parse that data out, and vice versa. If there's a Japanese webcaster out there and they've got someone from Kansas that's tuning in to Japan, that Japanese station better be paying SoundExchange for that Kansas listener, because the performance is occurring within the U.S. And it's now governed by U.S. copyright law at that point.
Yeah, that's one of the things we've been learning here, is that there's not a global group, a global rights. There's not one place. There are different rights in different countries, and it's quite a matrix in order to be able to broadcast. And again, that's why people like Live 365 are trying to go out and reach out to these organizations and get the ability to play there. So, well, I got to thank you for coming by. We experienced new ways of educating and working together.
It's always a pleasure. I can't wait to be back for the next one of these things. Hopefully it doesn't take an international health crisis to have a day like this happen again, because I'll be thrilled to do this, and hopefully I can see the Live 365 people in person at a tiki bar soon in the coming months. Wouldn't that be nice?
I'm going to pay attention to your apparel color to try to figure out what artists we're supporting today. All right. Travis, thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you all for participating and listening. And again, this wonderful presentation, if you join late or whatever, is going to be made available, and you can watch it anytime. And stay tuned for more of these type exchanges here. World Audio Day, episode 1.
Woohoo!
All right, thanks, guys.